Todd Phillips is a movie director, writer, and producer who has worked on 12 movies in his lifetime, which has put his name on my list for the best movie minds of all time.
I don't disagree with you that.
Todd was born in 1970 in New York. He lived with his mother and his two older sisters, who practically treated him like a third sister. He went on to attend NYU Film School, where he didn't graduate from, all because he had to drop out to pay for a documentary he was working on called Hated Gigi Allen and the Murder Junkies. This first film was about the life and death of punk rock star Gigi Allen, and went on to become one of the highest grossing student films back then. Todd continued making documentaries once he dropped out of school, such as Frat House, a film about fraternity life. The only way the fraternity was going to let him film this documentary was if they could treat him like a pledge of their fraternity. This just goes to show how Phillips wasn't afraid to get dirty and was committed to telling a story however he could.
A certain amount of manipulation involved in directing, but I do remember on the first day of walking into this documentary class at NYU, taught by this woman, Christine Choi, no joke, she said, first rule of documentary films, she goes, lie. Lie to everyone. She goes, lie to me. I'm going to lie to you. She goes, and if somebody comes to me and says, why did you tell your students to lie? She goes, I'll lie and say I didn't. Choose projects really based on the castability of it. Like when I had seen Lucas and Moore's first draft of this film, the structure was interesting. I knew it was really ripe for comedy and we could really push all that stuff. But at the same time I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to work with just 3 new guys and just kill it. And in fact, I was thinking about Zach when I thought about those guys. And for me, it's just casting informs everything. So I read a script, hear an idea, or start working on ideas.
He eventually transitioned over to narrative storytelling films, and was notoriously known during the early 2000s for his coming-of-age raunchy comedies, such as Road Trip, Old School, and Starsky and Hutch.
2 hot chickens. Think I want some think will get to me, huh? Come on, do it. Lay it on right here, do it. Do it.
My favorite from those was Old School, released in 2003, which is a film about 3 grown men trying to return to their frat boy days. After release, Phillips received backlash for this film because people believed the comedy was too edgy, which he responded with, things go in cycles, and right now people use the term gross out of comedy a lot, which I find very dismissive. I think it's very easy to be gross and very hard to be funny.
To feel that freedom, and I've been used to giving that freedom, I think, because of the comedies I've done, and you know, you don't work with Will Ferrell or Zach Galifianakis and say, sit here and say it just like this. Action. It's just not how you do it in a, you know, it's a much looser atmosphere.
Have you ever seen the movie Forrest Gump? I'm here for the gangbang.
The next comedy Phillips made really blew up, and it's what he's best known for, directing The Hangover. The Hangover is one of my personal favorite movies for keeping me laughing on the edge of my seat, wanting to see what crazy thing happens next. There's something special about how he uses his storytelling skills that come off so edgy, but in my opinion, just flat out work. And I'm not the only one who felt that way with The Hangover, because in 2009, it was the highest grossing rated R comedy film of all time, and it grossed nearly $500 million in the box office, and won a Golden Globe for Best Picture and Best Comedy, the first of many for Phillips.
I was doing a movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach, due date, and Robert came up to me one day and said, I feel like we're making a student film. And I took that as a compliment. I knew what he meant. It just felt like the inmates were running the asylum, and I think that makes an actor feel really free to try things and free to fuck up, quite frankly, because it's just like, yeah, we're all just kind of doing this, you know?
Then he went back to Hangover 2, which outpaced the first Hangover with $580 million in the box office. He then went on to direct a third Hangover, which grossed over $300 million, which put the whole trilogy to be worth $1.4 billion. After Hangover 3, Phillips decided to step away from the comedy scene for his next films. He stated he did so because he couldn't take the prevalence of the woke culture that was being formed within the comedy genre. And he felt he was getting closer to being canceled and wasn't going to truly be able to express himself the way he always had. In 2016, Phillips co-wrote and produced and directed another film called War Dogs. It's a true story about two young adults that somehow find a loophole in the government system and become unsuspected arms dealers. The film starring Jonah Hill and Miles Teller was the start of Phillips' direction to more serious films, but this film still had some laughs, like this scene.
Yo, hold up, man. Yo.
Come on, where's everybody going? Thought we were gonna hang out.
Movies are made 3 times. They're made when you write them, they're made when you shoot them, and they're made when you edit them. And so,
And the Joker, I just liked his sense of mayhem and chaos.
Todd called me and he said, I have this crazy idea for this sort of alternate version of DC. And the first one is the origin story of Joker. I thought, this is just so bold.
This is exactly how I imagined it.
I just love bad guys. It's fun to say, well, why is he like that? What made him like that? And that's ultimately really what the goal of the movie. It's not this gigantic statement on the world
The
today.
thing about doing a character study for me was how all the other things in the movie become characters, whether it's the cinematography or the music, which I think is a huge character in this film, the production design. These all become kind of front and center in a different way, and it was really exciting.
Todd's most recent work was within the DC universe called The Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix. His goal is to make a riveting story about a villain as the lead. The film featured so many different layers for the viewers to unfold and ultimately relate with the deranged killer. His goal when writing was to create a more realistic, compelling origin story for one of the most iconic villains in comic book history.
the movie feels like it was directed by the Joker, and I really like that, and I know what they mean. It felt like there was an agent of chaos behind the film, not just what the film was about.
This film was a smashing success, winning 19 different awards and grossed over $1 billion, making it the first rated R film to pass $1 billion threshold in the box office. Phillips is next scheduled to direct another Joker film that's set to release in 2024. He is historically the most successful comedic director alive. Some people might not think his films are very artistic or meaningful, but in my eyes, he's the definition of what being a well-rounded, likable director is all about.